Submission 5807 for the 2022 Data for Policy Conference. My name is Tom van der Sleen, and in this presentation I will present to you the findings of the study that I did in collaboration with Irina Susha, titled Voluntary Business to Government Data Sharing to Address Societal Challenges, Exploring Actor Alignment and Mutual Benefits. First of all, I will start with an introduction and a problem statement in which the research question is introduced, and then I'll elaborate on the theoretical framework that was used for this study, as well as the methods. Afterwards, the findings of the cases will be presented to you, and afterwards, the comparative key findings are presented. Lastly, the discussion and conclusion chapter of this presentation, the conclusions will be provided. Due to the complexity and scope of societal challenges, coordinated joint efforts between public and private organizations are crucial in addressing them. Within the public-private partnership literature, data sharing has gained a more prominent Due to the complexity and scope of societal challenges, coordinated joint efforts between public and private organizations are crucial in addressing them. Within the public-private literature, data sharing has gained a more prominent role, as the potential to address societal challenges is increasingly recognized by public sector organizations. As a result, data collaboratives, and namely business-to-government data sharing initiatives that aim to address societal challenges, gain more attention in the literature. Their cross-sectoral nature makes it beneficial for government organizations to participate, as privately held data can complement the available public data to gain a deeper, multi-perspectival understanding of a societal challenge. The benefits for the public sector, however, are less straightforward. In order for data collaboratives to scale up and move their practices forward, business to government data sharing for the public interest needs to be mutually beneficial and sustainable. This is recognized in the academic literature, as the academic literature reiterates the need to understand the drivers and motivations of business to government data sharing in order for these practices to further. It is also argued that data collaboratives need to find win-win scenarios and balance the interests of public and private organizations. And although this need is recognized, currently there is limited available knowledge on how this can be done in a business-to-government data sharing context. And this study addresses this research gap and explores the following research question: how can voluntary business-to-government data sharing to address societal challenges be mutually beneficial and sustainable? To answer this research question, our study elaborated on the framework for voluntary business-to-government data sharing by Organova. This framework contends that business-to-government data sharing between government and businesses is influenced by policy, technological, and organizational factors, and it also introduces the concept of alignment of interests as part of governance processes. The framework by Organova provides a basic view of these concepts, and it can be argued that these concepts need elaboration, especially in the light of our study. So the key concepts of the study are actors' interests, alignment of interests, and the benefits and for value creation that come from it. In light of these key concepts, we elaborate on the framework by adopting the view of Selsky and Parker, which differentiate between organizational self-interest and societal interest of partners in business-to-government data sharing partnerships. And to elaborate on the alignment processes, our study adopted the view of Selsky, of Austin, and Saitanidi, who introduced finding linked interests among partners as an alignment mechanism. Linked interests connect the self-interest of organizations, which makes it easier for them to reach a common ground in partnerships. And besides, the provision of incentives and rewards is introduced as an alignment mechanism in our framework. Furthermore, to elaborate on the prospective benefits of business-to-government data sharing, we adopted the conceptualization of value from Austin and Saitanidi, who discussed 4 types of value: which are associational value, resource transfer value, interactional value, and synergistic value, as can be seen in the figure. Our research focused on business-to-government data sharing for statistics. Business-to-government data sharing is especially interesting for statistical agencies, as the use of privately held data can help them to create more comprehensive, more accurate, and more timely statistics. In turn, these improved statistics can contribute to a more comprehensive understanding of societal challenges. As you can see in the research design on the left-hand side of the slide, our research was designed as a single case study with embedded subcases. The main case that we studied was Statistics Netherlands in the research design called CBS. Statistics Netherlands was chosen due to its prior history of collaboration with private organizations. And the subcases are examples of voluntary business-to-government data sharing partnerships in which Statistics Netherlands was involved, in which they initiated, and in which other private organizations eventually shared their data. Besides the main case study, contextual analysis was performed to better understand the context in which the main case and the cases were situated. Within these contextual analysis, we looked at, for instance, the technological and public and policy related factors that were present in the framework by Rukanova. And yeah, the findings of this contextual analysis supported the findings of the subcases. So the two subcases that have been studied and that are represented in the research design. The first one is the dashboard rapid indicators freight transport. This is a partnership that was initiated by CBS in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic to gain more insights in how freight transport would develop in during the COVID pandemic, and what the effects on the Dutch economy would be. The other payment service, the other subcase is a partnership in which payment service providers were involved. This partnership was also started in the early phases of the COVID-19 pandemic to see how this pandemic affected the economy, the Dutch economy, and more specifically on the development of transactions, either in store or online. Data collection was done through interviews, semi-structured interviews, and the analysis of relevant case documentation. The semi-structured interviews were conducted with 12 respondents from both CBS and private sector partners. And in these interviews, the respondents were asked questions that related to the development of the partnership, their interest in the partnership, how they perceived the alignment of interest within the partnership, and to what extent their perceived benefits or their expected benefits were realized at the end of the partnership. So in the next two slides, I'll present to you the findings of the subcases, starting with the first subcase, the dashboard rapid indicators freight transport. So the findings of our study suggest that this partnership was considered successful by the partners involved, as mutual benefits were created, and this partnership was prolonged for several times. If we look at the interests within this case, we identified that both actors pursued a mix of self-interest and societal interest, as can be seen in the table. The societal interests between Statistics Netherlands and the private sector organizations that were interviewed were aligned. The self-interests of these two actors were less aligned, but this did not cause any major issues within the partnership, and no major diverging interests were identified in the first place. Related to this interest that you can see here in the table, this study found that the organizational nature of an organization is an important determinant for their interests. The interviewed private organizations, in this case, were privatized around 10 years ago, and they therefore they still fulfill some public sector tasks. So sharing data with Statistics Netherlands was in this case considered to be in the public interest, and in light of their public history, they were willing to share their data. If we then look at the benefits, we see that the gain benefits in this case were mostly in line with the expected benefits that you can see in the table by comparing the second and the third column. So the benefits that have been identified in this case manifest itself in interactional and transferred resource value, so also based on the findings, it can be argued that a well-developed data culture is important to internalize benefits related to data reciprocity. So the insights from data, which you can see here in the table. So it is argued that organizations with less developed data culture are less interested in data-related benefits, as they cannot fully internalize the benefits of this. So the alignment mechanisms that have been identified in this case, so the main alignment mechanism here has been urgency. So the urgency to share data that was recognized by the private sector organizations in this case is considered as an alignment mechanism, as this created an increased willingness to share data, and this also linked to their organizational nature, what I just mentioned. Furthermore, the identification of partners' goals, needs, and perception, as well as maintaining intensive contact with partners, was identified as an alignment mechanism. The latter established trust between the private sector organizations and Statistics Netherlands, which eventually benefited the partnership. So in this case, the provision of incentives and reward was not necessary in the early stages of the partnership. Incentives and reward were not crucial in aligning the interests of both parties. However, later on in the partnership, several incentives were provided to the private sector organizations. For instance, one of the main incentives that was identified in this case was the returning of data and findings to the private organizations. These data and findings were based on the data that they shared, that these private organizations shared, and were, for instance, benchmarks. Another incentive, or rather a reward that was identified in this case, was a quid pro quo agreement that Statistics Netherlands drafted with the private sector organization in light of their long-lasting partnership. So this quid pro quo agreement was more or less a reward and a statement of value renewal, which made the partnership more sustainable. And this quid pro quo arrangement can be considered as a cost reduction reward or incentive. Then the findings of the second subcase, the payment service provider case. This partnership did not fully succeed in aligning all interests of the private parties and Statistics Netherlands. This becomes apparent in the fact that not all contacted private organizations were eventually willing to share their data with Statistics Netherlands due to, for instance, privacy concerns. As a result, Statistics Netherlands could not publish statistics based on the shared data. However, the data that was shared did provide insights into the COVID pandemic, which were very useful. If we look at the interests of the actors in this partnership, we see a mix of self-interest and societal interest that can be attributed to both Statistics Netherlands and the interviewed payment service providers. As can be seen in this table, the societal interests of both Statistics Netherlands and the interviewed payment service providers differed. Here, the payment service providers put more focus on corporate social responsibility, which can be explained by their organizational nature. Besides, the findings also suggest that this partnership was a way for some payment service providers to publicly bind itself to socially pressing themes, with which they hope to gain publicity. If we then look at the benefits, so comparison of The interests and benefits in this case shows that the expected benefits were not entirely realized, and this can be explained by the fact that this partnership did not fulfill its potential, as there was no publication of statistics. However, mutual benefits were created in this partnership, and in this partnership, and these benefits manifested itself in international value and transferred resource value. For instance, Statistics Netherlands developed new methodologies and gained practical experience in voluntary business-to-government data sharing partnerships. And both actors, both CBS, both Statistics Netherlands and the payment service providers, perceived more frequent publication of statistics and insights from data as benefits that they gained from this partnership. If we then look at the alignment mechanisms in this case, so in this case, urgency is also identified as a key alignment mechanism in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And furthermore, we also see in this case that the identification of a partner's goals, needs, and perception, as well as maintaining intensive contact with partners, have been identified as an alignment mechanism. Besides these alignment mechanisms, it is noteworthy that the interview payment service providers shared their data more easily with CBS, with Statistics Netherlands, due to its high data standards. And the findings of our research suggest that these high data standards partly arise from the legislation that Statistics Netherlands is subjected to. For instance, on privacy legislations, so the privacy legislations, and this creates trust in Statistics Netherlands. In this case, also incentives and rewards were identified. If we look at the provision of incentives and rewards in this case, we see that Statistics Netherlands provided data and findings to the private organization that shared data, for instance, benchmarks in this case as well. And also they shared knowledge with payment service providers on methodologies which were useful for these private payment service providers, as well as they have as they can integrate this knowledge in their own processes. All right, then on to the key findings of this research. So based on cross-case comparison of the sub-cases, several key findings have been identified. And this framework this framework is an extension on the voluntary business-to-government data sharing framework that has been introduced in the theory section. On the next couple of slides, I'll zoom in on the organizational interest, the alignment mechanisms, and the benefits. So in both cases, a mix of self-interest and societal motivations have been identified, although the sub-cases showed a difference in societal interest, whereas the interviewed private sector organizations in the dashboard Rapid Indicators Freight Transport state that they serve the public interest in view of their public history. The private organizations in the PSP case, in the payment service provider case, also shared their data as a sense of response to corporate social responsibility, or the desire to create social impact through their collaboration with CBS. So based on these findings, it can be argued that the interests that private organizations pursue in voluntary business-government data sharing partnerships partly depend on their organizational nature. And also the adopted view of organizational interest by Saskia and Parker has shown promising in describing the motivations of public and private organizations in such partnerships. So alignment of interest. So in the cases, urgency was identified as a key alignment mechanism in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. This recognized urgency created a common ground on which the partnership could build. And urgency as an alignment mechanism can have implications for future voluntary business-to-government data sharing partnerships in addressing societal challenges. Furthermore, the identification of a partner's goals, needs, and perception of the partnership, as well as establishing and maintaining intensive contact, have been identified as main alignment mechanisms. These two alignment mechanisms can help statistics agencies in identifying potential value propositions for private sector organizations and also establish trust. This trust is also reflected in the high data standards that CBS has, which were important in the two cases, which also created trust due to the legal frameworks to which Statistics Netherlands was subjected. This research identified 3 categories of incentives and rewards, which are promising in creating win-win situations in business-government data sharing partnerships. So first, data reciprocity, knowledge sharing, and cost reduction for data holders. And also value renewal can make and also it was identified in the 2 cases that value renewal can make partnerships more sustainable over a longer period of time. The benefits, so in 2 sub-cases, mutual benefits were realized, and these mutual benefits manifested itself in resource transfer and interactional value, the gaining insights, and within these 2 categories, gaining insights from data has been identified as the main benefit for the private sector, for the private organizations in the sub-cases. Although no associational and synergistic value derived benefits were identified in the 2 cases, this categorization of benefits is considered to be promising in a voluntary business to government data sharing context. All right, then on to the discussion and conclusion. So this study addressed the following research question: how can voluntary business to government data sharing to address societal challenges be mutually beneficial and sustainable? The findings of the study show that the interests of public and private organizations in voluntary business to government data sharing partnerships can be aligned through finding linked interests, in which the urgency in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic was identified as the main alignment mechanisms, and through the provision of incentives and rewards. Furthermore, the findings suggest that a more sustainable partnership can be realized through the provision of rewards as a sort of value renewal. The findings of our study can be useful for statistical agencies in the process of acquiring privately held data to improve their existing statistics and create new statistics, as they provide a better understanding of how the interests of public and private organizations can be aligned to create mutual benefits. And during the study, also several limitations were identified. For instance, not all private sector organizations that were involved in the 2 partnerships were available for interviewing. And also the 2 subcases did not have similar outcomes. So the dashboard Rapid Indicators Freight Transport was eventually able to publish its statistics, whereas the payment service provider partnership did not publish its statistics. To further explore and gain more insights into how voluntary business to government data sharing to address societal challenges can be mutually beneficial, the extended framework can be applied to other instances of voluntary business to government data sharing and also to other contexts. So thank you for listening to the presentation of our research, and hope to see you at the Data for Policy conference.